Alright, so if you're in the right room, my name is Kai. I'll be your MC for the short time that you are here in this work culture track. To kick off, we have a presentation on how design thinking can help revolutionize business practices by addressing current and future challenges, and how we can better incorporate this into our organization's work culture. To share her thoughts, please welcome APAC Collaboration Design Lead from Academy XI, Emmylou.
Okay, I'll just check this is working. Can you all hear me? Yeah. So my name is Emmylou Hamley, and I work with a company called Academy XI. We train the skills for the future of work, so those being in design, in business, and in emerging technology. We've recently landed in Singapore, and we'll be launching our courses in the next couple of months. So really excited to be here today. And I'm going to share some of my thoughts on design thinking for the future of work and how we can use design thinking to create that future. So firstly, we hear a lot of hype about design thinking. We hear it all the time. It's been happening since the early 2000s. And why is there so much hype? Why are there over 4,000 courses on Skills Future in design thinking? Well, basically, we realised that the way that we were designing companies in the 20th century was pretty complex, and it wasn't really working. So we needed a way to actually simplify that complexity and reduce it a little bit. But I want to argue that it's not about necessarily reducing that complexity. What it is about helping us to navigate that complexity. So if you think about the bureaucratic ways that we designed our companies in the last couple of decades, think about just 4 people in your company being in 3 meetings a week and for 2 hours, and how much that might have cost your company. So it's not a cost, it's not the best thing to do from a cost perspective, and it's also not the best thing to do from a creative perspective. And these are some of the ways that we tried to simplify this complexity. So you might identify that these are some of the processes for design thinking, and they each have, a set of steps that you can follow. But we know that if we try to reduce that complexity just by implementing steps, we're not understanding how we navigate. And design thinkers in the room will collectively have a sigh when they see this slide, because the design process actually looks a little bit more like this. Designing is the straightforward part, but the complexity is actually this part. And when we create a neat process, we miss the people and the complexity part. And that's what I want to talk about today. A design process is less about step 1 through 5, and it's more like step 5, maybe back to 3, maybe back to 2 and 4 again, starting all over again, going back to 5, and so on, until we have an innovative product that meets our customers' needs and beyond. And I want to propose that design thinking is actually a mindset. So it's less of a process and more of a mindset. And if we think about the literal definition of the 2 words, so thinking, to think is to consider and reason with an idea, and to design is to plan or to draw a thing that does not yet exist in the world, whether that be a garment or a building or a product. So to design think is to essentially reason or consider about a thing that does not yet exist in the world. So it is a mindset, inherently. And we know this because history tells us. Some of the most brilliant designers in the world have told us things like, if I had 5 minutes to chop down a tree, I'd spend the first 3 minutes just sharpening my axe. And if I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend the first 55 minutes on the problem and only 5 minutes on the solution. So it's more about the thinking and the mindset than it is about a process. So what's holding us back? If companies are doing design thinking, why are we still struggling to create, capture, and deliver on value? If design thinking is a mindset, mindsets are human, humans create companies. I'm going to do a little pop quiz. Now, I want you to think about a company that you've either worked with in the past or worked for in the past, or the company that you're working for right now. I'm going to go through a couple of questions, and I want you to ask them as honestly as you possibly can. Have you ever worked with someone who insists on doing everything through channels, never permits shortcuts to be taken in order to expedite decisions? Can I get a little show of hands? Yep, I certainly have. Have you worked with someone who makes speeches all the time They talk frequently and at great length. They illustrate points by long anecdotes and accounts of personal experience. Ever had this person in a meeting? When possible, they refer all matters back to committees for further study and consideration. And committees must never be more than 5 people. And they haggle over the precise wording of communications, minutes, and resolutions. Yeah? Well, your company is being sabotaged. This is quite literally an excerpt from a CIA document from the 1940s about how to sabotage companies from the inside out. So the way that we work isn't working, right? Our organisations are completely out of date. This is an organisation structure from IBM in 1917. Why? Well, it's because the very structures that we've created our companies around are built for a time when things were certain, when we knew exactly what we needed to get done, and decisions were made by consensus, and we knew that at the end of the day, that was the right thing. But we now live in a world of huge complexity and uncertainty, and humans are the best at navigating that. So, what do companies look like that are a little different? Well, they're networked, connections between people are valued, and the way that we work is completely different. The old way is through control and structure. Think about the buildings around your city. Think about how they're built around hierarchy. Think about where your executives work. Do they work on the top floors? So we need to think about how that power and control is designed in how we currently work. We're going through exponential change. This is not anything new to most of us in the room. And the companies that are moving at the fastest pace, that are keeping up with the times, are the ones that are reaching that $1 billion market cap the quickest. So I want you to look at how long it took a typical Fortune 500 company to reach that $1 billion market cap. 20 years. How long did it take Oculus Rift? 14 months. And there are some companies who are totally overtaking that. Technology has advanced. This is a 5 megabyte hard drive from the year 1954, so 65 years ago. It would have taken an entire cargo plane for me to send this presentation to each one of you in the room. And how we store our information is completely different, right? Who remembers filing cabinets and how we used to store pieces of paper and our work in there? These days, we have things like Google Drive, where everybody can access the same information at the same time. And we have trust among people that they can have access to that knowledge. But our expectations have increased. The number one person who can fire you in your company and can fire your entire C-suite is your customer. So they can simply take their business somewhere else if you're not meeting their needs. And those expectations have also increased within companies too. But our human needs have fundamentally not changed. If you just look at this example, with all of the advances in technology, we haven't really changed what we fundamentally want to do. We want to listen to music, right? The companies who understand this, the ones that are moving the fastest and the ones that are keeping up, these are the companies that embed design thinking in their ways of working, in their environment, and in their structure, and their culture, and it shows. So, what do these companies that are human-centered with design mindsets actually look like? Well, I'm going to talk firstly about what they don't look like. And they don't look like this chicken, and there's a reason for that. They're not competitive environments where high performance is encouraged over all else. They are people positive, they're conscious, they're places that establish ecosystems to support the silent shakers among the organisation. They're not just about that sage on the stage. And now, why is there a chicken on this presentation? Well, there was a famous biologist called Dr. Muir in the United States who wanted to do a study on high-performing chickens. And it's quite easy to know a high-performing chicken because they lay a certain amount of eggs per day, right? So he went around the States and he picked out all these high-performing chickens from local farms. He put them all into one barn together. Within a week, they had all but died, apart from one that was left. And they said, what the hell? What happened? And they went back to the drawing board and they looked at each of the barns where the high-performing chickens originally came from. And what they found made a high-performing chicken in the first place was the chickens around it. So it was the chickens that were providing the straw to keep that high-performing chicken warm. It was the chicken that was scratching out the seed from the water to make sure it was fresh for the high-performing chicken. It was all of these things. So I want you to think about that when we think about our organisations. Are we aiming purely for high performance, or are we thinking about the networks that we need to create amongst the people in our organisations? And here's an example of an organisation that's doing it right. So in the Netherlands, home care nursing is a very structured, complex kind of work, right? And for a long time, it was managed like a manufacture line. Basically, nurses were deployed for 9 minutes to give a medication here, 10 minutes to do a dressing over here, 5 minutes to check on the welfare of someone over here. And it was very task-oriented. And nurses and patients absolutely hated it. Loneliness was huge. People weren't getting better. And one nurse said, you know what, I'm gonna experiment with this. I'm gonna try something different. So what he said was, I'm gonna give the power back to the nurses to actually work with their patients and work around how they design the work that they do. Out of that was born this company called BIFSG2019. It's hugely successful. It's basically where local nurses self-organise around the tasks that need to be done for the people in their local community. And it's now been running for 4 years. Patients get better in half the time, and the costs fell by 30% in the first year. It makes sense. Networks thrive in complexity, and this is the important thing to think about. How we design our organisations around that complexity is so important. The future of work is completely responsive. It's adaptive to change and a place where people can learn as part of their work. Speed isn't agile. Now, I'm a mother, and there are a couple of things that scare me that grow fast in a household, right? One of them is mold, and one of them is weeds. So I want to talk about the fact that speed isn't necessarily a measure of success, and speed isn't agile. You don't need to be doing agile to increase the speed of your organisation in any way, or your organisation's ability to respond to change. Agility in the future of work is about empowering your people to do the thing that they need to get done. It's about understanding how to instill values in them so that you know when you let them go, they will do what's best for your company. And then it's your job as a leader to get out of the way. Those people understand what's called an operating system. They understand how the company works in every single component. And I want to introduce you to a design thinking tool that was created by a gentleman by the name of Aaron Dignan. He runs a company called The Ready, and it's the operating systems canvas. If you get a chance to look at this and do the activity with your workforce, it's absolutely amazing in terms of seeing insights. And what it does is it breaks down your company into the very components that create your operating system. So it's how your meetings are held, how your power is divided amongst your organisation, who has authority to make decisions. And then you can create simple experiments over 8 weeks at a time to improve your company and embed that design thinking mindset within it. Now, I want you to think about whether you're designing for an organisation that is to execute or you're designing for an organisation that is to learn. And ask yourself some of these questions because they're fundamental. I'll leave that up for a second. Some of the key takeaways that I want you to take today, besides some of those fundamental questions, and I'm happy to go back to that slide if we need to. Design thinking is completely and utterly a mindset. So it is something about the way that we think. It is less about the process and it is more about how your people actually show up at work and how they do their job. The future of work is collaborative. So it's about the connections between people. It is about how they get their work done and how they collaborate. And the future of work is intersectional. So this is about thinking diversity beyond gender, beyond basic demographics. This is about people's life experiences and thinking who are the best people to have around the table to understand the future that we need to design for. And they can be as diverse as you need them to be. I want you to think about the fact that design is actually not for you. And if you're designing something for you, you're designing the wrong thing. You need to design beyond yourself and you need it to be about everyone but you and beyond. And if none of these things work at all, ice cream solves everything. Thank you and see you in the future.